Welcome to Fan Fave with Katrina. Fan Fave with Katrina. It's time to talk pop culture.
It's a great day because you're listening to Fan Fave. I'm Katrina, and this week we are going to be talking all about 2022 movies, so I hope you are ready. But before getting into that, I want to do a quick pop recap talking about every pop culture thing that I have just not been able to stop talking about since the last time I spoke to you on this podcast. So first off, on Saturday, August 27th, I spontaneously found myself at Madison Square Garden for Harry Styles' residency. I wasn't supposed to go until this month, but I got last minute tickets and had some friends going, so I thought, why not? And I was blown away. It was my 5th time seeing Harry and the 5th night of his residency, which I thought matched up perfectly. We got medicine. The director of the As It Was music video was there. Harry sang happy birthday to his friend that was in the audience. McDonald's chicken nuggets were thrown on stage, and I just had the time of my life. Now, as you may know, Harry Styles fans like to show out. We like to dress up to go to the shows and everything. So I decided to spotlight fan outfits from this concert on social media. So if you're interested in that, totally head to @FanFaveMedia on Instagram and TikTok to check that out. I will also be at the 10th and 15th residency shows at Madison Square Garden, so stay tuned for all upcoming content coming with these shows. I also finally saw Into the Woods on Broadway. It was phenomenal. I had wanted to see it ever since it was at the New York City Center, but it sold out so fast, and then it transferred to Broadway, and then it was extended, so I finally got to see it once I moved back to NYU. I think this is one of my favorite shows I've seen on Broadway yet. If you have the means to see it, you definitely should. It's not something you want to miss out on. I also went to the National Book Festival on this weekend in Washington, D.C., which was fun because I grew up going to it every year as a kid, but this was my first time going in a while, and I have to say, you guys, I'm about to be a reading girl again because it was so much fun, and I got some new books to check out, so maybe I'll even have some recommendations for you all soon. As for what I've been watching, still tuning into She-Hulk. It's getting crazy though, you know. We had that Megan Thee Stallion cameo, and I had heard rumors about it for a while and didn't fully believe it until it actually happened. But now that it did, it's like, did we really think we were going to watch a show about the savage She-Hulk and not get the savage herself, Megan Thee Stallion? It's crazy, but I love this show and how unpredictable it really is. I've also seen some great new movies since the last time I talked to you on this podcast, but granted the subject matter of today's episode, I'm going to go ahead and hop right in. September has begun, and as we reach the end of the summer blockbuster season, I wanted to take a moment to talk about all of the movies that have come out this year and my opinions on them. I have seen a grand total of 57 new movies released in 2022. And at first, I wanted this episode to be a ranking of my top 25 or so, and I found that it was just too difficult. It's just so hard to compare completely different movies on different elements, and there's a set of movies I feel very strongly negatively about, and then another set of movies that I absolutely rave about. But in between, there's a good amount of movies that fall right in between there where I kind of don't have a strong enough opinion to talk about them. And in fact, I feel like if I were to re-listen to this episode in like a month, my rankings would be completely different and changed. But I'm going to try my best to have a conversation with you all today about the standout new films I have seen this year, along with some that were pretty big disappointments. Along the way, I'll be checking in with fans because I love hearing from you. And we'll also be discussing what's new and upcoming in the film industry, as well as movies to look forward to. So let's get into it. I'm just going to start with some of the movies at the bottom of my list. I think it's better to start low and then we can keep going up high. So first off, let's talk about a movie that I think most of you will agree is at the bottom of your list. You probably already know what I'm going to say because of all the memes that have gone around this year. It's Morbius. I think my biggest disappointment with this movie is the fact that we went through months and months of watching the trailer for this movie because its release kept getting pushed back. And there was one key line of the trailer where he goes, "I am Venom." Just kidding, Dr. Michael Morbius at your service. And it wasn't even in the movie. And I don't know if they took it out because of the backlash. A lot of people were calling it corny and stupid, but I just feel like for as much as I had to hear it in the trailer every time I went to the theaters, it might as well have been in the movie too. It was like the most iconic line from the movie. I'm also not really into vampire stuff, so I think that also made it hard to watch. And there were just a lot of plot things that didn't make sense to me. So yeah, that's the lowest movie on my list for this year. Another big disappointment, I have to say, was The Bubble. I thought the concept of a documentary style movie following actors making a movie during COVID and having to stay in this sort of bubble sounded very interesting. And the fact that it was directed by Judd Apatow made it seem promising. And it had a stacked cast, but I think this was one of the most disappointing movies to me. I didn't find it funny, and it was pretty long for what it was. I had to watch it over multiple days and almost forced myself to finish it because I had felt like I wasted so much time starting it, and I just had to get through it because I was just committed to finishing it. I just really wish it was done better because I think this was a great concept and a great cast, and it really could have been something special. Another movie pretty low on my list is Moonshot. I was primarily excited about the cast of this movie, especially with Mason Gooding and Lana Condor, but I felt that Mason Gooding was severely underused, and the plot was kind of cool, but it reminded me of a movie from a couple of years back called The Space Between Us, if you remember that one. And overall, the movie was pretty predictable. I feel like in general, the plot was very lackluster and forgettable. However, I couldn't stop thinking about how if this were released in like 2017 when I was 16, I would have made this movie my everything. So I'm sure there are some teens out there that did love it. Next, a pretty recent release that was a disappointment to me is the new Kevin Hart and Mark Wahlberg Netflix movie, Me Time. This was directed by the same director of one of my favorite movies of all time, I Love You Man. It did not give I Love You Man at all, you guys. I definitely thought it was going to be like this funny, like bromance type of movie, and the plot was just very lacking. I can love a good dumb movie, so I didn't care that it had very outlandish moments, but to me, there just weren't enough shenanigans going on. And with two comedic talents like this starring as a duo, I feel like there definitely could have been a lot more happening. Now, I don't want to spend too much time talking about my least favorite movies of the year, so let's start getting a little bit more positive. I'm going to jump up a bit further in my list and point out some of the more standout movies sitting ranked between numbers 21 and 50 on my list. I'm mainly going to be talking about the bigger blockbusters that fell into this range, as I'm sure more of you will have opinions about these movies, but I'm also going to talk about some smaller movies that I recommend. In the middle of my list, I have movies like the Netflix film Windfall, which was a very fun, very finely focused thriller, and Death on the Nile, which was interesting. I will say the reveals in Death on the Nile were much easier to see coming than in Murder on the Orient Express to me. I watched it in the theaters and I really enjoyed it because I was fully immersed into following everything that happened. On a side point, in general, I just feel like I'm more likely to like a movie if I watched it in the theaters versus on streaming or anywhere else, where I'm more likely to multitask or not give the film my full attention, if you know what I mean. I honestly think Jurassic World Dominion falls in the middle of my rankings too. Not top, not bottom. It was just mediocre to me. A lot of movies I feel like these days are just playing on nostalgia lately. And you know, with movies like No Way Home and Ghostbusters Afterlife, so I feel like bringing back the original trio from Jurassic Park was exciting, but the actual movie felt very long. It didn't have enough dinosaurs to me, and it sometimes even seemed like two different movies happening at the same time. There also wasn't enough action at all, but when there was action, it was really good. Now, if you are looking for that action-adventure type of movie, I recommend watching Beast, because it felt a bit like the original Jurassic Park in the way that the action was sequenced. Essentially, they are stranded out with a killer lion, so if you were to substitute the Jurassic dinosaurs for a lion, you get Beast. It was kind of a dumb movie, but it's entertaining, and also it was left in this kind of middle area of my rankings for this year. Next is Kimmy, starring Zoe Kravitz. This was another movie in the middle that I liked and wanted to point out. It was fun for a 90-minute movie. I was very engaged the entire time, although I felt you could kind of see the plot twist coming. Definitely not a major standout for me, but one of the things that I recommend checking out this year if you're looking for something new to watch. I also want to point out The Bad Guys, which shout out to Elay, who let me know this was her favorite movie of the year. I have it in the middle of my list at spot 29. I feel like I'm just not a big animation person anymore, but this one really had an engaging plot, and I think besides Turning Red, which is number 18 on my list, it's my favorite animation movie that came out this year. I think it was animated very well, I love the style of it, and it had some pretty funny moments. Another movie I want to talk about is The Fallout, which I currently have ranked at spot number 28 on my list. I think this was a very real movie. I thought it was written very well. It did a great job at capturing the voice of Generation Z, how we talk and how we act, but it does have some very, very difficult scenes to watch and is overall a really heavy movie in tone. So I'm not sure I'd ever rewatch it, but I do think it's worth checking out for once. Now I'm going to be stepping into the zone of my top 20 movies of the year. I have the 355 at number 20. I'm not sure what you all may think of this movie. I know I got very mixed reviews and everything, but I personally had a fun time watching this one. I loved the concept. I thought the cast was great and very, very talented, and I'm still holding out hope for a sequel. At number 19, I have Marry Me. Now, remember what I said earlier about watching movies in the theaters? I made going to see this movie a whole outing. I know in quality it isn't the best movie of the year, but I think it's fun, it's rewatchable, and I just love rom-coms so much, so I will always sit down and enjoy a cheesy rom-com, and this one has Jennifer Lopez and Owen Wilson, so you really can't lose. At number 18, I have Turning Red, which Kennedy reached out to say is her favorite movie of the year. This movie was really cute. I really loved the animation style of this one, and it was Pixar, so you knew it was going to be great. I love how they capture the essence of the teenage fangirl because that was totally me at age 13 about the boy bands of my era, like One Direction. And I'm sure you all had the Four Town songs stuck in your head like I did. They were amazing. At number 17, I have Spring Awakening, Those You've Known. This is a documentary, and I did not know much about Spring Awakening before watching this one. And to be honest, I love the story, and I just think it's so cool how they were able to reunite everyone for the concert 15 years later. I listened to the cast recording for the first time after watching this documentary, and a lot of the songs cracked into my most listened for the month of June. So I'm really glad they made it because it introduced me to something new, and I'm just glad I watched it. At number 16, I have Uncharted, which I wasn't familiar with the game at all before watching this one, and I did think that the film had some silly elements to it, but for what it is, it's a fun adventure movie, maybe not enough twist, and it actually felt very similar to the plot of Outer Banks Season 2. Like, if you've seen Season 2 of Outer Banks, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. It's like almost copy and paste the same. But I will say that I think this is my favorite Tom Holland character that I've seen in his movies so far, like maybe even over Peter Parker even. And I think it's just because Nathan Drake is a bit older of a character, but they were talking about turning this into a franchise. I really hope they do because I'd like to see more of this story. Now, I'm going to take a break from my countdown because I'm sure you want to hear what other fans think about 2022 movies so far. I reached out to the Letterboxd fan community because I know they are big on movie opinions, and I got a lot of responses, literally over 100 responses. And it was so exciting to see which movies were the most popular because there definitely seemed to be a handful of movies that regularly got brought up. I'm sure you can probably predict the most popular response. It was Everything Everywhere All at Once, which received over 22 fans noting that it was their favorite movie of the year. Other notable inclusions include The Northman, which got brought up 13 times, as well as Top Gun Maverick, Nope, and The Batman. Marcel the Shell with the Shoes On, Cha-Cha Real Smooth, After Yang, Elvis, Prey, and RRR were additional movies that were brought up multiple times. A very interesting slate from these fans, so let's see how many of these movies made it into my top 15. Honestly, I feel like at the top 15, this is a point in my list where I really lost track in being able to rank these movies. But at number 15, I have The Batman. I thought this movie was amazing, very cinematic, and I didn't even go to the cinema to see it. If you're wondering why I didn't see it in the theater, it's the same reason it's not higher on my list. Personally, I think it's too long. 3 hours is just a lot to sit through, and I feel like it definitely could have been shorter, but the style, it was very pleasing to look at, and I loved the dark tone of the Batman and the detective style plot. It was very engaging throughout its endless runtime. At number 14, I have Emergency. I'm not sure if a lot of you have seen this one, but I definitely would recommend. It had been on my watch list since its premiere at Sundance, and it's now streaming on Amazon Prime. It follows two college best friends and how they handle a series of events when they go out for a night of partying. This is another movie that had me yelling at my TV in frustration at times just because it gets so twisty with the choices the characters make. I also think it provides a great entry into the commentary within film about race and policing, but it's not overly dark and serious in tone as they are in college and the dialogue can often be comedic at times. Now next, the movie starring my favorite famous Chris and my favorite famous Ryan. The Gray Man starring Chris Evans and Ryan Gosling is number 13 for me. I love a good action movie. This one was extremely formulaic, but I was willing to let that slide because its story was engaging enough throughout its duration, and I think it's a great base for a franchise. I think we definitely need some more action franchises. I feel like we don't really have any new major ones coming out right now, and The Gray Man could provide a whole new world to really dig deep into and explore. I also think it's so funny seeing Chris Evans play a villain. Like, he does it so well, but like also thinking about Knives Out, it was just kind of comedic. I don't know. I guess I've always just been used to seeing him play this classy good guy as Steve Rogers, Captain America. So it definitely takes some getting used to, but I think he's great in it. At number 12, I have Jerry and Marge Go Large. This is a nice, lighthearted family movie streaming on Paramount Plus. I love that it's a true story as well. It's about a couple that used their lottery winnings to help their town. I've already seen it twice this year, and it came out over the summer. I just think it's very sweet, and I'd even argue that it has one of the best movie villains of the year because that Harvard kid was crazy, you guys. Definitely go check this one out. At number 11, I have Thor: Love and Thunder. Now, I told everyone before this movie came out that it was going to be the best Marvel movie of the year, at least until Black Panther 2 comes out. It has been one of my most anticipated Marvel movies of this phase since the announcement, but I think for a good amount it was a disappointment. I didn't really know how I should place this on my ranking, but it somehow ended up at 11. I think if you erase Ragnarok from your mind, this is a pretty good movie, but it's just not as funny or as focused as Ragnarok. It's definitely a step down from it. I was a little bit disappointed that the Guardians of the Galaxy weren't in much of the movie, and I guess it makes sense the way they did it, but I would have watched a full-length movie of just their adventures, and in fact, I would have preferred it over a movie with gore. Which, speaking of gore, Christian Bale was underused severely, and I didn't even really like the look and feel of a lot of the scenes in the Shadow Realm. I'm sure you are wondering why this is number 11 on my list too now, but it came after Multiverse of Madness, which was a bigger disappointment to me, and I'm a huge Marvel fan, and I think it was really unique for Marvel to try and dip into the rom-com scene, and as you know, I've been saying this a lot, I love rom-coms. And I just think that Jane Foster is great as the Mighty Thor. I want more of her, like, as soon as possible. And also the reveal of Love and Thunder at the end was, like, the cutest thing ever. So I still feel like Thor: Love and Thunder is a movie that I truly love. At number 10, I have Not Okay. You guys, this movie is one of the craziest movies that I've seen this year so far. It's one of those movies where it's almost hard to watch because the character keeps digging themselves into a deeper and deeper hole. If you can think of like Dear Evan Hansen, or maybe if you saw Mainstream with Andrew Garfield, it kind of gives off that vibe where you just have to absolutely dislike the main character. It definitely mixes strong comedic elements with its slightly dramatic messaging to point a lens to the fakeness of influencing and internet wokeness. It's a movie that will likely have you reacting in frustration at your screen, but I definitely think it's worth a watch. I think it's crazy though how at one point of this movie, you can be dying of laughter and then the next moment you are incredibly disturbed. This movie is just great at making you feel everything while watching it, so check it out and let me know how it makes you feel. At number 9, I have Nope. I was really anticipating the release of this movie, but when it came out, I did become a little bit hesitant because I don't like horror movies and people were saying that it was scary. I had seen Get Out, but I had determined that I probably could not handle Us. Nope, however, kind of falls in between these two. I feel like it was a lot more sci-fi leaning. I loved the cast in this one, obviously with Daniel Kaluuya and Keke Palmer and Steven Yeun. Also, the general aesthetic and tone from the movie, I loved it so much. Like, I was invested before the trailer came out with the cloud. I was like, what is going to be going on here? And so I feel like the film really delivered really well. I will say with this Jordan Peele movie, I was expecting a bit more of a twist. I understand that the underlying message was with society's obsession with spectacle, but I just felt like the last act of the movie felt a little bit flat for me. I didn't love it as much as Get Out, but I feel like it has high rewatch value and it's just beautifully shot. Now, Warner reached out to FanFave to let me know that Nope was their favorite movie of the year. Warner says, Nope has to be my favorite of this year. It was just genuinely scary in a way I haven't experienced since a little kid. At number 8, I have Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers. I think this movie was what the Space Jam reboot from last year wanted to be, and what I mean by that is that it was a cameo fest that did not feel forced. It had the most random references and appearances, and Paul Rudd had a cameo, so maybe that's why it's also higher on my list, but it was just crazy how much they pulled from other movie universes and things of that nature, and the way that they just pulled it all together with one of the characters being in CGI and one having just normal animation. They just really did any and everything under the sun, but it was funny because they were self-aware. And I just feel like the plot was literally about pirating movies, which is crazy, and John Mulaney and Andy Samberg are such a duo, but it was an adventure that I loved and enjoyed a lot. At number 7, I have The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent. This one was really, really fun. I love nonsense comedy movies, and this was just a load of silliness throughout. To preface, I'm not a big Nick Cage fan. I think the only movie of his that I've really seen is National Treasure, so a lot of the references went above me if they were there. I think Pedro Pascal was also such a gem in this movie, and I don't know why, but I didn't see the twist coming, and I think maybe that was because I wasn't trying to figure out what was going to happen with the plot. I was just watching along for the ride and the adventure that these characters went on, and for that, this is a very valid movie. It's just fun to sit back and enjoy. Listed at number 6, I have the BJ Novak film Vengeance. I really didn't know what the tone of this movie was going to be when I started it. I didn't watch a trailer or anything. I just hopped right in. This movie was very funny. It reminded me a little bit of Only Murders in the Building, where he's a podcaster trying to solve a murder and he's podcasting while doing it. BJ Novak's character, Ben, is from New York, and he goes to the middle of nowhere in Texas. And if you're wondering how wacky this movie is, one of the biggest plot twists happen while the characters are just sitting in a Whataburger, just talking. I really loved this movie, though, and I do feel like it slips a little bit at the very end to try to emphasize a message. But even in that, the ending is really crazy and pretty unexpected, in my opinion. You should definitely check this one out. Now, let's hear from some more fans. Let's start out with Colin and what they think are the best movies of the year.
At first, my answer was Top Gun Maverick. It's probably the best sequel it could have been to a movie that didn't need a sequel. Way better than it has any right to be, honestly. But after seeing the new Dragon Ball Super movie, I think that takes the cake for my favorite movie of 2022. It was just so fun to watch it in theaters, and I fanboyed so hard during that movie. And even though Top Gun might be a better movie overall, I just loved the new Dragon Ball movie.
Achilles let me know that Decision to Leave by Park Chan-wook was their favorite movie of the year, writing that it's an amazing police procedural with a unique love story and amazing shots. Alexa also wrote to Fan Fave saying, "My favorite movie of 2022 was RRR, an insanely fun, action-packed movie that was easily my best experience with an action movie in the past 5 years. A guy throws a leopard at another guy in a fight, and that's not even the coolest thing." I have to check out these movies, y'all. They all sound great, although I've seen none of them, so I definitely need to get on it. I have heard some great things about RRR from multiple people, so maybe I'll have a look at that one first. But I do think a fun thing about getting to interact with fans is that we're all able to get new recommendations from each other and just learn about new things to check out. So thank you all for contributing. Okay, now it's time for the top 5. I prefer we look at this as a slate of top 5 movies and not this one is better than the other, because it was really, really hard for me to sort these, and I love them equally as much for different reasons. So first, let's talk about Everything Everywhere All at Once. I loved this movie. I will say, though, that I went into this one with a little bit too high of expectations, because I sat through months and months and months of TikToks and tweets and YouTube videos and Letterboxd reviews basically saying that this was not only the best movie of the year, but a lot of people said it was the best movie they've seen in their entire lives, which is crazy. So by the time I eventually did get to this one, my expectations for it were so high that ultimately it may have led to slight disappointment, but I thought it was extremely unique and brought a new, fresh, and exciting world to the table. Definitely a movie we are going to be talking about for years. I totally believe that. I do wish I saw this one in the theaters, but it came out towards the end of the semester of college and I was super busy, even though I did find time to see that other multiverse movie in theaters. And I do have to say, the quote, "In another life, I would have really liked just doing laundry and taxes with you," truly outsold I love you in every multiverse in every possible way. Next up on my list is Top Gun Maverick, which here's my thing about Top Gun. If you watch the original Top Gun from 1986, would you think, wow, this movie is so amazing, they should make a sequel almost 40 years later and it will break box office records? Because the original Top Gun movie just does not give that at all to me. The plot in the original is so simple. It has that classic 80s feel, which I love. I absolutely love 80s movies, but it just doesn't do that much for me where I would think that a sequel in 2022 would be this big box office success, but it was. And I think that is because Top Gun Maverick has so much heart, a lot more exciting action as well. And I think the action alone just makes the movie, it's crazy how much action has gone into it. Also, in the first Top Gun, it just felt like there were a lot of things just happening. Like they were being trained and each day there was just something new that they were facing. But in Top Gun Maverick, there's an actual mission, which is exciting. And I just feel like I connect with the stories of the characters a lot more. I had time to get to know them enough to root for them by the end. And I think that made all of the difference with Top Gun Maverick as well. This movie just feels like a blockbuster when you watch it, if that makes sense. Like, it just feels massive when you look at it, and it was definitely a hit. Next up on my list is Elvis. The Elvis movie changed me. I was once one person when I walked into that theater, and then I walked out completely different. It's just something about it, that movie, that just causes a shift that has caused me to not stop thinking about this movie literally since I watched it. I don't know if it's because it was a different time and just watching the history of Elvis's story, because I feel like for me, I didn't know a lot about Elvis before I watched this movie. Maybe the most of his music I heard was watching Lilo and Stitch. So I feel like this was my first real introduction to his story. And also the fact that Tom Hanks kept talking into the camera and addressing the audience "You did this." I think that just really makes you connect with it in the funniest way possible. I also really think that Austin Butler is just incredible, and I love Baz Luhrmann's directing style, and I loved his work with Moulin Rouge, and I'm just obsessed with musicals in general, so this was a standout favorite for me this year. Now, I said I love rom-coms, so in second on my list, I have I Want You Back. This was an Amazon Prime movie starring Charlie Day and Jenny Slate. I love this movie so much. The plot is simple. The two main characters get dumped from their long-term relationships that they are super passionate about, and then they meet each other and decide to befriend each other's exes to convince them they should get back into their original relationships. Now, going in, you kind of already know what's going to end up happening by the finale of the movie, but anyways, with rom-coms, it's all about the journey, and this is a really crazy, fun roller coaster of one. I recommend this movie to everyone if you're looking for a laugh. It's a great watch. Finally, number one on my list is Cha Cha Real Smooth. I actually had a couple of fans reach out to say this was also their favorite movie of the year, which is exciting. This is the ultimate comfort movie of the year. It feels like a warm hug. It is uplifting and fun, and a movie that I can identify with, probably because it was written and directed by a 25-year-old who also stars in the movie as a character trying to find his purpose in life after graduating college. This is a movie I can put on and rewatch as many times as I please. It's slow and touching, but it has its fun and comedic moments as well. I wouldn't be surprised if this one, along with Everything Everywhere All at Once, gets some real attention at the Oscars next year. So there are still a few movies that I need to catch up on and watch. First off, two A24 movies that I am really interested in seeing are Bodies, 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 which from what I've seen so far looks like it could crack at least my top 15, and also Marcel the Shell with the Shoes On, which I heard from a lot of fans saying this was one of their standout films of the year. I also skipped out on seeing Minions: The Rise of Gru. There were just a lot of movies being released at that time, and with the teens acting crazy in the theaters with this one, I let it slide and haven't gotten around to it. I also haven't seen Lightyear yet, but I love the concept of it, and Chris Evans, of course, so I will have to check that one out as well. And I've also heard really great things about the film After Yang. I have also not yet seen Bullet Train, which Sharifa and Toomey both reached out to let me know it was their favorite movie of the year. Let's hear from Toomey.
Bullet Train is by far the best movie I've seen in 2022, if not like the past few years. First of all, the cast is insane. Like Joey King, Brad Pitt, Aaron Taylor Johnson, Brian Tyree Henry. I mean, Bad Bunny. It's crazy. Like all the cameos. Logan Lerman, Sandra Bullock. I was in shock. It was amazing. And like they all just worked so well together. Like they're not people I pictured being in films together yet. They all just flowed and they were all so funny. And I love this mix of this action / comedy that it goes for, because it's dark and it's intense. And even though the whole thing basically just takes place on the train, it just feels like there's so much space and a lot of exploration. And I just thought it was amazing.
I totally agree with this, Toomey. I think the cast of this is great, and whenever I saw the trailer play at the theater, I would get so excited because it just seems like a fun watch. So I definitely have to get on Bullet Train. Maybe I will do a part 2 to this episode at the end of the year, recapping my favorite 2022 movies with the inclusion of some upcoming releases. Which, speaking of, we have a lot of great, exciting new movies coming soon. I wanted to talk about our most anticipated movies. First, for me, Don't Worry, Darling. Now, it's a known fact that I'm a Harry Styles fan, so obviously I'm watching it with the excitement that he is in it. But unlike Dunkirk, which I went to see opening weekend in 2017 solely because Harry Styles is in it, I'm actually very interested in the story of Don't Worry, Darling. I probably would have watched it whether Harry was in it or he wasn't in it. I read the original script. I love the vibes where it's like this 1950s Matrix sort of story going on. Florence Pugh is also incredible, and I have faith in Olivia Wilde as a director because I love Booksmart, but I do wish there was a lot less drama surrounding this film. I really fear that all of the bad press is tainting the reputation of it, so let's hope when the movie comes out, it's the content that shines through. Another movie I'm looking forward to see is Weird, the Al Yankovic Story. Warner reached out to let me know that they are also looking forward to this one, stating, I haven't seen just a good old-fashioned comedy in a while, and I love UHF, so how could I not be excited? I totally agree with Warner on this one. It looks so fun. I will be at New York Comic Con this year, and a panel for this movie recently got announced for this Sunday at the convention with Daniel Radcliffe in attendance. I will be there, which I'm so excited about, and I will be getting content for you all, so stay tuned for how that goes and what I think about the movie. I'm also really excited to see Glass Onion, the sequel to Knives Out. I just know it's going to be good. It has to be. I'm also ready for The Woman King with Viola Davis. Everything about this movie just looks amazing so far, and the trailer really has me hyped. Now, also shout out to Alexa, who reached out to FanFave to let me know that their most anticipated movie of 2022 is Puss in Boots: The Last Wish. Alexa states that they are really excited for this one because I don't know what to expect. From the trailer, it looked like something different when compared to other animated movies recently, and the art style looks awesome. The downsides I'm worried about seem to be the normal animated kids movie stuff, annoying, quippy, celebrity-voiced animal comic relief stuff, but I'm overall excited for it. I'm really curious about this one. I'm definitely going to have to look into it and watch the trailer. I saw the first Puss in Boots, but it's been a while, so I'm kind of surprised they're making a sequel this many years later. Like, it's been over 10 years now, right? So I want to see what they're up to. Lastly, I'm a Marvel fan, and I've already watched the trailer for this one so many times. Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. I am counting down the days for this one. It's definitely going to be the best Marvel movie of the year, and probably even the best of this Phase 4. It will be one of the greatest cinematic events of the year, and I cannot wait. I am so excited for it. Now, if there's a movie I didn't mention in this episode that you're like, you need to check this out, let me know because I want to hear from you. That's all for today, though. Thank you so much for listening to Fan Fave. If you loved this episode, tell your friends and look forward to the next podcast episode coming to you very soon, as this is a bi-weekly podcast, so expect new content right here every other Monday. If that isn't enough, stay connected with FanFave on all social media platforms at FanFave Media, where I post vlogs, film and TV reviews, and reactions and breakdowns to the latest in pop culture news. And remember, I want to hear from you, so stay tuned for upcoming opportunities to have your opinion heard right here on the FanFave podcast. Thank you. See you soon.